Fight Mike here. Today I'm going to be ranking all of the UFC champions on how likely they are to lose their belt. The ranking will be from the next people to lose their belt to the last ones to lose it, and I've included Islam Mackhachev even though he doesn't hold a belt at the moment, but jumping in with the first fighter I expect to lose their belt, and it pains me to say it actually, it'll be Alexandre Volkanovski, sadly. I can see him getting past his next test, depending on who it is. If it's a Movsar Evloev, maybe. Lerone Murphy, maybe. But it's going to be difficult coming from a 37-year-old Volk. And even if he won his last fight against Diego Lopez, I could clearly see the decline in my favorite fighter, Volkanovski. He was a lot slower. He was getting caught on the feet a lot more. His footwork looks miles slower. And the only way he can stay champ is if Lopez beats Silva and Volk can get past Lerone and Movsar, which is already a difficult test. And especially the Lerone fight itself. In Volk's prime, I pick him to win that fight 10 out of 10, but now we've got a new, more human version of Volk. So Lerone does really have a good chance now. They're both very similarly active on the feet. Volk used to be a lot more active, and Lerone's going to have the length and speed advantage nowadays, even though back in Volk's prime, he was probably twice the speed of Lerone Murphy. I think now they've evened out, and it's going to be a very tough fight between the two of them. But I probably would be picking Volk to win that one. But if Volk draws the Gene Silva card, I'm sorry, the title reign is over. Because Volk's got that style of come forward, he'll pitter-patter you. Not really pitter-patter, he'll put some damage onto you. But he's not really finishing guys left, right, and center. He's not flatline KOing them. But that sort of style never bodes well for the counter-puncher who only needs one shot to KO you. Like Gene Silva, I think it's going to be really tough. I think Volk would look good in that fight like he did the early of the Ilia Topuria fight, and then he's just going to get finished in the second and third round. So I think that there would be a maximum of 7 months left on Volk's title reign, which is a very sad thing for me to say. I want to see him back up there for 3 years, but I don't see it. I really don't see it. Next up. This is going to be a weird one for some people, because if this was in their original weight class, I would say that they would be the least likely to lose. But it's Islam Mackhachev. I think since he's up at welterweight now, I'm looking at the welterweight top 10, and I think that they're nightmare matchups for Mackhachev. I can see a lot of the top 10 getting wins over Mackhachev, but why he's not below Volk is just because I think he has a pretty good shot of beating JDM. I am very 50-50 on that fight, but even if it is a tough task, I'm not sure if I'm going to pick him in that fight. And the rest of the top 10, a lot of those guys, I think, have a better shot of beating Islam than even JDM does, just stylistically. Guys like Shavkat, Usman, Bilal, I'm picking every single one of them to beat Islam Mackhachev in that fight, just because I think they do have the physicality and the takedown defense to be able to keep Islam off of him, and then the power to finish Islam on the feet. Even guys like Leon, Sean Brady, Ian Gary, I would consider picking over Islam. Probably not Leon. I'd probably pick Islam to submit Leon. Sean Brady, I would pick to beat Islam Mackhachev. And Ian Gary, I would say, is a 50-50 matchup for me, just because he's shown very good takedown defense. Footwork is very good for Ian Gary. He's good at range. He's going to be able to keep Islam at range. And he's a lot longer than Islam. So even if Islam beats JDM, I think he loses his very next fight. And even then, I think it's a 50-50 shot whether he beats JDM in the fight. But unlike Volk, I think if he wins, it's going to be like a 10-month turnaround and then he would lose. So I had to put him above Volk. Just because even if Volk beats his next opponent, I bet he's back in there by March or April next year. And doing so, I think he just gets finished in the next fight after that. So that's why I have Islam above Volk at this time. Next up on the list, the third spot on the list, is for my GOAT, or everyone's GOAT, to be honest. I've heard Bedtime MMA has been talking about it for a long time. It's JDM. See, I was tossing up whether to put him or Islam at third, but the fight is 50-50, so I can't really separate each other from each other at this point. But I think that JDM does a little bit better against the current crop of welterweights. Not saying I'd confidently pick him over the others, but I'd confidently pick JDM to beat Shavkat. I'd pick him to beat Usman. I'd pick him to beat Leon and Ian Gary very comfortably. The only guy I would actually pick at this point to beat JDM is Sean Brady. I can see stylistically Sean Brady being able to stick to JDM, not giving JDM enough room to work the body shots or work the combinations. And even if he does start working the combinations, I can see Sean Brady having the strength, having the grip to just hold JDM down. And even if he can't finish him, I could see him winning a decision in that one. But the biggest reason why I picked JDM to be above Islam Mackhachev is just because I see JDM doing very well against the current crop of welterweights, whereas I don't see the same thing for Islam Mackhachev. There's so many grapplers at welterweight, though, that eventually one of them will out-grapple. But I think that there's a chance that he reigns for another 12 or so months, maybe a year or so of title reign, and then loses after that. Next up, this is going to surprise another load of people, but I think it's Merab. See, you may be thinking Merab should be number one on this list, as he's basically already beat everyone in his division. But I think it's coming up to the time when Merab's time will come. The thing is that Merab's style is so over-reliant on his physical attributes. His speed, his power, his wrestling's not physical, but all of his speed, power, cardio, all of those are physical attributes. And although those attributes won't die off straight away, they'll catch up to him eventually, especially with the activity that Merab's pushing out in these fights. He's fighting 3 times a year. All the time we're seeing him get back into the octagon. And the thing is that people talk about Merab fights like he's dominating them, but a lot of them are very, very close, like the Umar fight, the first O'Malley fight, the Aldo fight, the Cejudo fight was somewhat close. All it takes is someone to make one round closer or land one more good exchange on him, and they win the round. He's not dominating these guys that badly. But I don't think it's going to be a Sandhagen or Petr Yan to beat him. I think it's going to have to be an Umar rematch, or even like a Mario Bautista or a Song Yadong in 2 years, or like a 14 months away. I could see them getting a good shot after a little bit of improvement once Merab slowed down a little bit. But he may beat them as well. I think maximum, though, 1 to 2 title defenses after beating Petr Yan, and he's going to be done. Because these young guys, they're making it close with him already. And they're going to have so much tape on Merab by the time he's 35, 36. Even a year from now, he's going to have fought 3 times since then. So there's going to be another 75 minutes of Merab tape that people are going to be able to study and find ways to emulate and replicate the success people have against Merab. So, in saying that, I think he has another 14 to 18 months left of being a champion, but I could see it being as little as 12 months with 4 title defenses, but I still think that's much the same. Moving on to the next one, this is also going to be one to surprise a few people. I think it's going to be Alexandre Pantoja. Similarly to Merab, I think it's going to be time that defeats Pantoja, not really style, just because if I look at the current crop of flyweights, there's a lot of really, really good young guys, but I think that they're all too inexperienced to beat Pantoja at this time. Joshua Van doesn't have the grappling to beat him. Taylor doesn't have the striking. And Mackhachev isn't even in the UFC to be able to beat Pantoja in the first place. But I think Pantoja is going to submit Van at the end of the year. After that, he's going to have no real contenders, so he's going to riff off a couple of like undeserved title shots. Maybe get a Tetsuro Taylor, maybe get Manel Cap or something, and I think it'll be more so likely 2 years down the track, Mackhachev at like 27 years old is going to get re-signed to the UFC and be able to win a decision on Alexandre Pantoja, or within that time, Joshua Van's able to come back and get a rematch with Pantoja and come back with like the best takedown defense in human history and get a KO on Pantoja when Pantoja's like 37, 38 years old. But I think that guys like Taylor will improve their striking and maybe can edge past him in a couple of years. But I do still think it's going to be a couple of years. And although they are good prospects in their own right, looking at them now, they're not the same level as Pantoja. So I think we get another 2 years of Pantoja being champ because he doesn't really fight too much. I think 3 to 4 title defenses more and Pantoja will be retired, or he will lose his belt due to just being a little bit too old at that point. Moving on to the next guy, I think it's Magomed Ankalaev. Let me clarify, I don't think Ankalaev's more skilled than these guys below on the list, but I think he's going to be champ for longer, and the main reason is because light heavyweight's in a really bad state at the moment. There's really no exciting contenders at light heavyweight, and after Ank beats Pereira, which he likely will, who really gives Ank problems? Do you think Olberg does? Do you think Prohaska does? Or Roundtree? Or Azamat Mirzakhanov if he beats Rakic? Like, I really don't see stylistic matchups that Ankalaev's going to struggle with in any fights moving forward. And honestly, all the guys that I mentioned, I think that Ankalaev comfortably beats them all by decision. He's very skilled, he has a very risk-averse style, and historically, the guys who focused as champ on reducing damage like he has end up having very good title reigns. Think of John Jones, think of Adesanya, think of DJ, think of GSP. They're all very similar in that fact, and all of them have had boring fights along their title reigns, but all very long title reigns themselves. I think Ankalaev is going to be much the same. I can see 2 to 2.5 years more of Ankalaev being champ. Moving on to the next guy, who is Tom Aspinall. I see this similar to the Ankalaev situation, where I don't think Tom Aspinall is the most skilled fighter on the list. But I think the heavyweight division is very weak at the moment, and there's not a single contender that I would look at and think they can beat Tom Aspinall. Maybe Gelton Almeida is an interesting matchup, but I think Tom KOs him in the first round. And then after that, there's nothing left at heavyweight. Maybe Ankalaev or Pereira comes up and tries to beat him, but I think he smokes them both out cold in the first round, and then there's no one else to give him troubles. To be honest, I think 3 years down the track, I could see him just blowing his knee out against Rizvan Kuniev or something like that, and just losing by like injury, or just losing due to just not caring anymore. I don't think anyone is going to come close to Aspinall, especially looking at the prospects of the heavyweight division today. We've got guys like Taliesin Teixeira, who I don't think at any point in his career will ever give Aspinall a chance. Or Mario Pinto. I think Mario Pinto throughout his entire career, even if Tom Aspinall is 70 years old, gets slept out cold in the first round by Aspinall. Moving on to the next guy though, we've got Khamzat Chimaev. If anyone saw my video breaking down Khamzat's future opponents, they knew that I was going to put Khamzat really high in this one, just because I think he beats everyone currently in the middleweight division. I look at the matchups in middleweight, and although some guys may give Khamzat a tough time, like a Baralho or Hernandez, I think Khamzat's level of wrestling is so far ahead of them that he may never lose in the middleweight division. And even then, the other thing about Khamzat, he pretended he wants to come back in October, but the reality of it is that Khamzat will probably not come back for like a year every time. And even if he fights and gets 5 title defenses, they're likely to be only once every 12 months. So I genuinely think that Khamzat will probably hold the belt for 4 to 5 years, super inactively, but winning against everyone and retiring undefeated. Moving on to the last guy, the guy who I think will hold it the longest, I think it's going to be Ilia Topuria. And the only thing that I think beats Ilia Topuria is if he turns into Icarus and goes to 170 pounds. Because at lightweight, I do not see anyone beating Ilia. And I genuinely think he could retire as the GOAT of the sport. Let's say they feed him Gaethje, he's going to get a round 1 KO. And then let's say they feed him Arman or Pimblett, he's going to flatline KO them after maybe a little bit of trouble. Then let's say it's a Max fight, then he's going to KO Max yet again. And then it's going to be like a Dan Hooker looking like a lamb to slaughter against Ilia Topuria. And what my point is that none of these guys are technically close to Ilia Topuria on the feet, and he's going to be able to defeat them until the new young prospects come through. And it's guys like Mauricio Ruffy or Grant Dawson who are the young prospects coming through. And whilst they are good, they're not Ilia Topuria level. Maybe a Gene Silver moving up is going to be difficult, but I can't name a person under 155 who I'd really pick to beat Ilia with confidence. I do worry that he's not going to stick around long enough to win this. I could see him doing like 2 title defenses more and then just retiring. But if he fights twice a year consistently for the next 3 years, getting 6 title defenses, he is easily the GOAT of the sport. And I think he wins this out of any champion on this list today. I think he's going to be the one to stay the longest if he can stay focused and stay in his division. And the only reason why I picked him over Khamzat is just because I think Khamzat's not going to be fighting as regularly as Ilia. So he's not going to be able to stack up the same amount of title defenses that Ilia was able to. Let me know what you think of this video in the comment section below. As always, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.